Pete willingly took a polygraph, and the polygrapher was someone that is an independent polygrapher here in our area.
They said it was your husband who gave him.
Yeah, and see, that's a lie.
Okay.
But I mean, you'll just see lie, lie, lie. I mean, throughout this whole story, you'll see parts left out and you'll see lies. And eventually, I tell everyone, truth always wins.
You had something to say about polygraphs and basically their validity.
Yeah, I've got two comments on that. One, they're inadmissible in court. And so even as police, the only time we really deal with polygraphs is when we're in the hiring process and you take a polygraph after you do like a 600 question personal history statement. I mean, it's like a 40-page thing where they dig into your whole life and then they do a polygraph based off of that. But we don't do polygraphs that we're trying to prove someone's guilty of something or whatever. There's a reason, and one of the reasons is it's not a lie if you believe it. So if you are so deceived or you have so just worked it into your mind that people think there's a special way to beat a polygraph. Oh, I'm going to tap my foot or what. That's not how you beat a polygraph.
There have been significant new developments in the Daystar television network scandal, a story that's shaken one of the most prominent Christian broadcasting families in the world. At the center are deeply disturbing allegations of sexual abuse involving a member of the Lamb family. If you're just catching up, here's the background. Last November, Jonathan Lamb, son of Joni, and the late Marcus Lamb and his wife Susie, accused a male relative, referred to as Pete, of sexually abusing their daughter. To protect the integrity of the case, they withheld his full identity. The accusations sent shockwaves through the religious media landscape. Joni Lamb, now leading the network, publicly denied the claims. Since then, the rift within the family has played out in the public eye. Recently, the Colleyville Police Department closed its investigation, stating there wasn't enough evidence to move forward with charges. According to the lead detective, the alleged victim had not made a formal outcry, and no evidence of a crime was found during the 18-month inquiry. But it's important to be precise here. A closed case doesn't mean the allegations are disproven. It simply means investigators didn't find sufficient grounds for prosecution. Now, Daystar is presenting polygraph test results as a defense. Pete, they claim, voluntarily submitted to 2 polygraph exams and passed both. They argue this supports his innocence. Rachel Lamb, one of Pete's most vocal advocates throughout this saga, recently released more details about the tests on social media, reinforcing the narrative that the family is being unfairly maligned. Still, this raises important questions. How much weight should we give to polygraph results in a case like this? Are they truly conclusive or just a tool to shape public perception? In July 2024, rumors about Pete reached their peak, spreading rapidly among trusted ministry partners and friends. While whispers of these allegations had been circulating since March, they gained significant traction during this time. It became evident that these previously debunked accusations were being reignited, this time actively fueled by Jonathan and Susie, who were determined to spread these harmful falsehoods to anyone willing to listen. Understanding the gravity of the situation and the potential damage these escalating rumors could cause, Pete took immediate action. On the advice of his attorney, he voluntarily underwent a polygraph examination to clear his name. The results were definitive. Pete passed the test with a probability he was telling the truth at 99.5% accuracy, confirming he was innocent. In Julie Roy's article, she falsely implies that Doug Weiss was involved in orchestrating the polygraph process. This claim is entirely baseless. Doug had no involvement whatsoever and was completely unaware that Pete had even taken a polygraph test until after the results were finalized. This deliberate misrepresentation is yet another example of how Royce manipulates the narrative, distorting key facts to fit her agenda rather than presenting the truth. 3. To set the record straight, I am sharing screenshots of Pete's polygraph. Results of the first screenshot contains the name of the poly. Ralph Standifer, who has absolutely no connection to Doug Weiss, despite the false claims by Jonathan Lamb and Julie Royce. B. The second screenshot shows Mr. Stander's conclusion that the statistical probability that Pete told the truth was 99.5%. The polygraph examination was conducted by Ralph Standifer on July 19, 2024. Standifer is a highly respected licensed polygraph examiner in Texas with over 2 decades of experience. He graduated as salutatorian of his class at the Texas DPS Polygraph School in 2003 and is a member of the American Polygraph Association, the American Association of Police Polygraphs, and the Texas Association of Law Enforcement Polygraph Investigators. In his most recent role, he served as the Internal Affairs Unit Commander and the department's polygraph examiner from 2015 until 2024. Over the course of his career, he conducted more than 1,500 polygraph examinations for employment screenings, criminal investigations, and internal investigations. These facts unequivocally demonstrate the credibility of the polygraph process and refute the unfounded allegations made by Jonathan Lamb and Julie Royce. It is clear that their narrative is not rooted in truth, but instead what appears to be a coordinated smear campaign. During an interview with Marcus Rogers, Joni Lamb brought up the polygraph results, using them to reinforce the claim that Pete is innocent.
Pete willingly took a polygraph, and the polygrapher was someone that is an independent polygrapher here in our area.
They said it was your husband who gave him.
Yeah, and see, that's a lie.
Okay.
But I mean, you'll just see lie, lie, lie. I mean, throughout this whole story, you'll see parts left out and you'll see lies. And eventually, I tell everyone, truth always wins. It always wins. But this polygrapher was one that was a forensic polygrapher that actually would deal with pedophiles. And so they asked Pete, would you take the test? He said, absolutely. And so he took the test, asked some awful questions. You can imagine what this is doing to him, destroying him, even the very accusations. And so when he was done, the polygrapher said, well, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news? And I think he said, at least they told me, he said, I'm just numb from all of this. And he said, well, the good news is that you scored 99.5%. And he said, that's one of the highest scores that you can score. And he said, you want to hear the bad news? And he said, what's the bad news? He said, the bad news is that you even had to come and do this, because I find when men are guilty, but I also prove when they're innocent, and you're innocent.
The Lamb family appears to be putting significant weight on the polygraph results, treating them almost like a silver bullet in Pete's defense. But that brings us to a critical and uncomfortable question that needs to be addressed directly. Are polygraph tests actually reliable indicators of innocence? Can a polygraph really prove someone didn't commit a crime? The reality is far more complicated. Polygraph results are not admissible as evidence in most courts, and for good reason. Their scientific reliability is highly contested. Rather than detecting lies directly, polygraphs measure physiological responses such as heart rate, blood pressure, and perspiration. But these responses can be triggered by a wide range of factors: anxiety, stress, underlying health conditions, or even certain medications. To put it in perspective, imagine you were falsely accused of something as serious as child abuse. Even if you were innocent, wouldn't you still be incredibly stressed during a polygraph exam? That stress could easily influence the results. On the flip side, someone who is actually guilty but remains calm or detached might pass without issue. That's why many experts, including seasoned law enforcement professionals, remain deeply skeptical of polygraphs. In fact, we'll hear shortly from a former police officer who sheds light on just how unreliable and misleading these tests can be.
You had something to say about polygraphs and basically their validity.
Yeah, I've got 2 comments on that. One, they're inadmissible in court. And so even as police, the only time we really deal with polygraphs is when we're in the hiring process. And you take a polygraph after you do like a 600 question personal history statement. I mean, it's like a 40-page thing where they dig into your whole life, and then they do a polygraph based off of that. But we don't do polygraphs that we're trying to prove someone's guilty of something or whatever. There's a reason, and one of the reasons is it's not a lie if you believe it. So if you are so deceived, or you have so just worked it into your mind that people think there's a special way to beat a polygraph. Oh, I'm going to tap my foot or what. That's not how you beat a polygraph. The crazy people can beat a polygraph, and the reason is they actually believe the lie that they're living out. So if you are deceived, the problem with being deceived is you don't know that you're deceived.
Right.
And so if you do something under a demonic influence, or if you do something and your mind is just so warped that you are convinced, I would be interested to see the statistic of narcissists who would pass a polygraph, because they are so convinced that they're right, that they're whatever. If you believe a lie, then you will not fail a polygraph, because what they're looking for, and again, I'm not a polygraph expert, I just understand the basics of how they work. So, but basically they're looking for a physical response that you can't fake, you can't beat. When someone asks you a question and it causes your body to react, you can't fake that. But if you actually believe it up here, then there's not going to be a reaction. Like if I ask you, what's your name? You're not going to have some insane reaction. But if I were to ask you some very revealing question that your family member told me right now, you would be uncomfortable. There'd be things happening on the inside that you can't fake.
Within law enforcement circles, polygraphs are generally viewed as investigative aids, nothing more. They're tools used to gather information or guide questioning, but they don't hold up as concrete evidence of guilt or innocence. What adds another layer of complexity to this case is an audio recording from the forensic polygrapher who administered Pete's test. This individual, who specializes in cases involving child sexual abuse, shared some revealing insights. While confirming the procedures followed during the exam, the polygrapher also made pointed remarks about the Lamb family. They described the environment around the case as emotionally charged and overly theatrical, a characterization that could cast doubt on how seriously we should take the family's narrative, and by extension, the polygraph results themselves.
First of all, it appears that the polygraph, the conductor of the polygraph, that it may have been, now I'm just going to say allegedly may have been, that this was actually his very first polygraph test administered. And then there seems to be some, it says here, polygraph company has only been in existence since July 30, 2024. And the polygraph seems to have been taken, I think, on July 19th. So before some of this even came out.
What troubles me most about this situation isn't just the allegations themselves, it's the way the response is unfolding. We're watching a family come apart in the public eye. A criminal investigation was conducted, but it ended without charges. Not because the matter was resolved, but because the evidence wasn't strong enough to proceed. And now, Daystar is centering its defense on polygraph results, despite the fact that these tests aren't even considered reliable enough for court. That's not a technicality, it's a fundamental issue. Our justice system doesn't accept polygraph results as proof because their accuracy is simply too uncertain. Yet here we are, being asked to treat them as conclusive. I'm not here to make declarations about who's right or wrong. That's not what this is about. But I do think we need to ask harder questions that matter not just for this case, but for how we handle allegations of abuse in communities of faith. Why is a polygraph being treated as final word when it's not recognized as such in any courtroom? Why did it take until mid-2024 for Pete to even take the test, given how long these accusations have been circulating? And why is the end of a police investigation, one that explicitly cited insufficient evidence, being presented as a full exoneration? These are questions that deserve honest discussion, even if the answers are uncomfortable. Because at the heart of all this are people, including a child, who deserve to be protected, heard, and believed where appropriate. It's easy to want clarity, to want closure. But when it comes to allegations this serious, we have a responsibility to think critically, not just emotionally. The goal shouldn't be to protect reputations. It should be to protect truth, and above all, protect the vulnerable. As this story continues to unfold, let's remember what matters most: justice, accountability, and the safety of children. Even when it's difficult. Even when it challenges what we thought we knew. Now I'd like to hear your perspective. Do you believe polygraph results should carry any weight in a case like this? Let's talk, but let's also be mindful. There are real people at the center of this story, and they deserve our respect, not speculation. If this analysis helped you see things more clearly, feel free to share or subscribe for future commentary. Thanks for taking the time and for approaching this with care.